Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Glenn Morris. I'm the CEO of the Chamber here in Santa Maria. And one of the things that we are trying very hard to do is make sure that we are providing our members with accurate, current information from the best experts we know in our community as we all try to navigate this unique economic moment that we're living through. I'm pleased today to have been able to be joined by David Merlo. David is the Principal Director with Glenn Burdette here in Santa Maria, one of our leading CPA firms here in town. And David, thanks for taking some time to meet with us and share some thoughts with our members.
Of course, thanks for having me, Glenn. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So I would imagine you're spending an awful lot of time doing what I'm trying to do, which is read a fire hose full of information about all of the tax and incentive and all of the aid programs that are coming out. My guess is that you have a few better resources to try to understand those things and synthesize them in a bit. And so wanted to just ask initially, can you give us kind of a general overview first of what are the kinds of aids or incentive, or recovery tools that you're seeing come through from the federal government primarily that small businesses ought to be looking at?
Well, what we're seeing right now, and you're exactly right. It's almost like you hit the nail on the head when you say you're drinking out of a fire hose. It's almost like trying to shove a basketball down a garden hose, right? And things that are coming out right now is everybody's seeing the news out there. Everybody's got their little tidbits, social media, just like everything else. What we're looking at is constantly what's coming out from the IRS, what's coming out from the Department of Labor, what are the different provisions from our AICPA, CalCPA, all the different provisions of, essentially the, COVID-19 acts at this point in time is what we're looking at, which is Family First Coronavirus Response Act, and it's specifically the CARES Act that was signed here more recently at the end of March. And that's where we're seeing our largest tax provisions right now. I think something that you and I have spoken about and you mentioned is that everybody's hearing a ton about the payroll protection, PPP loan overall, and everybody's trying to apply for those. There's a lot of things going on right now with those and everybody trying to apply for them, but then also with the provisions and the interpretations of the law seem to be changing daily, if not hourly at times. So small businesses trying to keep up on those and reaching out, as you guys have said, reaching out to your CPAs, your bankers, and your people from that standpoint to say, hey, what's going on out here? What do you need from me? So one PPP loan, you guys hear a lot about. There's another one called a disaster loan, EIDL loan, and that is actually converted to a grant. Everybody's hearing about those. Those actually just changed last night that I found out. So there is where everybody's applying for a $10,000 grant to be tax-free. It came out last night that they could potentially be changing those, and anybody that applied before March 30th, now I'd have to go back and apply and tell you how many employees they have, and they're going to limit it to $1,000 per employee. So, that's something that just came out last night. Don't know if everybody should go reapply and to get that grant, or if they should just wait on what they have. And right now I'm recommending people to wait because I think there's going to be more guidance that comes out on that. So those are the two big things that you're hearing a lot about. There's also other tax provisions, which I look at are important as being net operating loss carrybacks for a lot of people. They have changed that provision. We need to go back and you need to talk to your advisors and say, hey, what are those provisions that I have losses on my 2018, 2019 returns that now I can carry back 5 years and get tax dollars today? Provisions on that front. There's provisions for people that are taking required minimum distributions in their IRAs. They don't have to take them for the 2020 year end. So you can stop that. You don't have to take that into your taxable income. That's granted. You need to analyze what your personal situation is, whether that's good or bad to take that. People that are really hurting can actually take up to $100,000 out of their IRAs or pension plans. You can take a $100,000 loan, pay back over 5 years, or you can take $100,000 out of your IRA, which you don't have to pay a 10% penalty on. And that's another piece that's out there that I think people need to analyze. Everybody's situation is different. And under that, if you do take $100,000 out, there are provisions in the new law that say, well, you can, one, pay that back over 3 years and this not pay tax on it. Or the second one is spread that tax out on that money over a 3-year period so you don't have to pick it up all in 1 year. So all good provisions that we're seeing out there that are coming in are really trying to help everybody from a cash flow perspective. The other big thing that, of course, I haven't mentioned was obviously the IRS coming out and then government giving everybody the $1,200 per person, stimulus check, and which they're hoping to see in everything I've seen there. People starting at $10,000 in earned income, hopefully to see refunds next week, $20,000 the weekend after, $30,000, and then on up from there overall. So looking at your particular case and saying, hey, where does this fit into me? Have I filed my 18 return? What do I have for 18 income? Have I filed my 19 return? What do I have for 19 income? The other provision I want people to be aware of on that is this is technically a 2020 provision. So people that don't get something but end up in their 2020 tax return, they're indicating there's going to be a place on the 2020 tax return where you can actually get that benefit on your 2020 tax return also. So obviously everybody wants the cash flow right now, but it's also something that I don't see that we're going to ultimately lose out on if you don't get it right this second.
Right. Yeah, I think it's important that people understand that, some of these tax pieces, specifically, right, the carryback provisions or net operating loss stuff. And, I think I've read some about, there's some payroll tax issues that are there. There's some tax credits if you retain employees. But as I understand it, some of those are A but not B kinds of situations, right? So if you take, this particular tax credit, then you can't, take advantage of, one of the loan programs, for instance. And so, I think that's where we're trying to really share with people that before they jump down a particular path, they need to sit down with their tax advisors and look at which one really is the best benefit, right?
I would agree with you 100%. And with that, those provisions you're talking about is there's 2 different payroll tax credit, or actually 3 different. There's one payroll tax deferral piece, which was in the CARES Act. And then there's also another piece in the CARES Act that talks about, maybe the payroll tax deferral piece might be in the Families First Act. And then the payroll tax is under family leave and sick leave, which you get a credit for. That's under the CARES Act. And then there's another credit that they talk about that you get a 50% credit of wages up to $10,000, which is probably something you're alluding to there on that, Glenn, is that, but then there's other provisions part of that. That's also part of the Families First Act. And that's saying that, okay, if your revenues go down by 50%, then you can qualify for this credit. So there's a lot of provisions that go into. Now, when we look at that, if you defer your payroll taxes, and that's saying you don't pay any payroll taxes right now, and then you don't have to pay them until 2021, end of 2021 or 2022. If you take into that provision, you cannot qualify for the PPP, the payroll protection. Right. So there's one piece. So you got to be careful with that. Same thing with the if you have reduction in your business and you close your doors and you furloughed everybody, the credit of $5,000 that you get for your payroll taxes, again, another provision that you can't take into account if you're going into the payroll protection law. The last provision on payroll taxes is the one where you have sick leave and family care leave. Those credit you can still get, as they're indicating right now. And like I said, these things are changing daily. They're indicating right now is that you can actually take both of those provisions. And if you get the payroll protection loan, you just can't use that credit. So you can't double dip with using their payroll protection loan to pay your employees and then also get a credit for someone that you're paying for sick leave or for Family Leave Act. So those work together. There's other ones out there that hey, they don't work together, and we want to be cognizant of that.
Absolutely. What advice are you giving to your business clients right now around record keeping, or, is there anything different that people should be doing right now to kind of tag some of these expenses, particularly if they're going to think about using them as a tax credit rather than a loan, so different loan programs?
There's nothing specific in the code at this point in time to say. I think most people all of these credits are related to payroll, right? So as long as one, if you're doing your own internal payroll, just make sure you're keeping your tax record, keeping everything readily available here. Essentially, they talk a lot about things from, essentially March 27th or March 15th forward. Some talk about February 15th, but it's really keeping those payroll tax returns and everything, or actually your weekly or bi-weekly payroll is really the most important thing of this. Because there is a provision on one of them that they just came out with that is at the end of March, if you had any credits that you are going to qualify for at the end of March, they want you to report that on your second quarter 941 payroll tax filings versus on your first quarter. So they want to push those wages to the second quarter. Now, again, so that's something, we really want to be cognizant of and watch. The other thing you want people to really watch for now at this point in time is, things that could be part of any type of debt relief or payroll tax credits would be, one, the payroll, two, watching your health insurance, because health insurance gets any type of the employer health insurance covering. And also the other part that gets included in a lot of these is any part that you're paying for retirement benefits for people. So if you're doing a 3% match or a 4% match on a 401k or a simple plan or anything like that, that is also something that you want to be cognizant of and be able to monitor as these things come up and you want to do.
Are there some other strategies that you're working with your clients? You mentioned a few minutes ago, cash flow is king, right? Cash is now king in a lot of our businesses, right? Mm-hmm. And so trying to minimize expenses or defer expenses, restructuring existing loans, some of those kinds of things. Are there some strategies that you're finding that are, the people ought to be thinking about right now in particular that maybe weren't as important 6 weeks ago?
Well, I think the most important thing is actually looking at your cash flow. And I've been actually on the phone probably, 12 hours a day plus talking to people about this. They extended the due date from April 15th to July 15th, so the tax returns went on the back burner, but this stuff came to the forefront. But this is also I find to be very useful in working with people on their business operations. So first thing, as you say, cash is key. Looking at a cash flow statement for your business. A lot of small businesses don't do cash flow. So let's go and look at your cash in, cash out. Let's look at your AR, how you're receiving your cash, how you're doing. What is your cash flow channel? How long is it taking you to get that cash in the door if you're making a sale? What you're selling? Are you selling a service? Are you selling a product? Looking at what, first and foremost, almost going in and scheduling out your AR and giving that AR almost a ranking of an A, B, C, and D of what's going to be your best cash flow model over the next 6 months, 3 months, 6 months, and looking at those things from a business standpoint. And secondarily, almost looking at your expenses the same way and doing that. There's, okay, what are my essential expenses to keep my doors open versus what are my non-essential expenses and breaking them out. And I'm having a lot of conversations with those people because every small business is different from that standpoint. And you want to look at those things. And something you and I talked about earlier today, Glenn, is one of those things is, reach out to your banker, reach out to your accountant, reach out to your advisors, because I'll say, 2 heads is better than 1, 3 heads is better than 2. Let's put all of your, trusted advisors together and let's work on this together to come out the best scenario for you. Because the other side, some of this is making the hard decision too, where some people cannot keep their doors open. And when you're a good advisor, you got to make that hard recommendation at times, because if they close their doors today, they may be able to preserve some cash so they can actually open their doors back up here in a month or 2 months. And where people don't want to do that, you got to be that type of advisor and advise those hard decisions sometimes.
That's such an important point that, I love your analogy of one head and two heads and three heads, right? I think so many of particularly the small businesses in the community, they're running 100 miles an hour just trying to keep the business going, take care of the people that work for them. And then they're trying to drink from this fire hose, right? And trying to self-help through all of this stuff. And I think it's great advice to tell folks, you can take a breath, call a professional, call somebody that will be there to support you, right? And that has those resources. So great advice there. Thanks for sharing that. In addition to all your clients, you're trying to run a business yourself, right? How are things going with Glenn Burdette? What are you guys looking at, and what kinds of changes are you doing in your business?
Well, we're looking at it. First and foremost is we like to say we deal with all our clients and we put our clients first. But if Glenn Burdette isn't here, it doesn't help our clients. So Glenn Burdette is one of our #1 clients. So our group has put our heads together. We've looked at everything from the HR perspective. As soon as this came down and the work at home provisions came out, and since we're both in San Luis and Santa Barbara counties, which at certain times they were making different provisions and coming out with different ways of approaching
right.
it. We've tried to take a very overly cautious way of approaching this, and we at this point probably have between 60 and 70% of our staff working remotely, even though we're an essential business, so we're allowed to stay open, which has been put out there by the governor and the governor's office from the accounting practice, where accounting practices and business advisory. So, but we have put that provision out there. We've got everybody set up. It's obviously been again a hard process, but making sure most of the people are set up. We still have our offices open, but they're closed to the outside public, I think, just like everybody else. So we're following all the CDC's advices on that. And, when I sit here and advise clients on things, I'll tell you first and foremost, I'm doing the same thing for myself or the same thing for our businesses. And so we're looking at it from all angles and putting our heads together to say, hey, what is the best way to approach this? But, so we're looking at those provisions. But, first and foremost, we're trying to take care of our employees just like everybody else.
Yeah. So we've been telling people they need to pick up a phone and call you or call whoever the you is in their world, right? Before they do that, are there 3 or 4 steps, things they ought to do, some homework to make that conversation more productive?
Well, I guess it depends on the business when we look at it, Glenn, because some businesses are so overwhelmed right now, they wouldn't even know where to start. So from that standpoint, I would say, number one, just give your advisor a call, because they may able to, they're going to know your business better than anybody else. So they're going to tell you, hey, let's look at A, B, and C first, or let's just look at A first. So I will say that I don't have a set list of 3 to 5 things that I would tell every business, because everybody I work with is a little different. So first and foremost, I just say, pick up the phone, make the call, try not to do it on your own. And, even if there's another business owner out there that you're close with or that you work with, put your heads together. We all want to succeed through this and come out with the light at the end of the tunnel here. So I think everybody's seeing it that same way. And we live in a very unique community. And when I say unique, we all want to see each other, survive and succeed when we look at our valley and the Santa Maria Valley and, our extenuating, even outside of the Santa Maria River. We want to see our Central Coast and everything survive. Right. We'll put those heads together. And I think first and foremost, like I said, and I repeat it again, is that, just make that call and don't think you have to do it all on your own.
Well, we really appreciate the advice and the information. And we appreciate what you and your team do, day in and day out, but probably more now than ever, people recognize the importance of having good professional advisors out in our community. So thanks for that. Before we wrap up, any kind of last points you want to make sure from an accounting, financial management perspective? Any last words of advice for folks as they try to navigate this, unknown world we live in?
I think that there are some great provisions that are coming out overall. So everybody across the board can fit into some of these provisions. There's a lot of interpretations, a lot of ambiguities in the law. So let's try to take advantage of them the best you can. And don't think, the other thing you're seeing is some businesses saying, I don't need them. At least look at them. Look at your business. I think this is a great opportunity for all of us to look internally at our businesses and make sure that they're running as healthy and in the best way that they can overall, and not to think that, hey, this is just going to change down the road, so I'll be fine. Let's take this opportunity that we have right now and look at it as an opportunity to improve what we're going to do into the future.
You know, that's a great point. It's probably a little crass and maybe a little too soon, but I've always really loved the saying, you know, never let a good crisis go to waste. And I think you're right. This is a great opportunity for all of us to maybe look again at how our business is set up, how it's running, look for those things that maybe we were, you know, comfortable doing that weren't the best, and now they're really annoying, and make some changes that need to be made, and sometimes those hard decisions. So really appreciate you taking some time today, and wish you the best as your business goes forward and all your clients. Thanks again.
Thank you very much, Glenn, and I appreciate, you know, everything that that the chamber and the Santa Maria Chamber and everybody's doing. You guys are doing, and the work that you're putting in for our businesses, everything that you're putting out, everything on your website that you have, which is a lot of these links that everybody else is putting out for the businesses. So thank you for everything that you and your team are doing for all of us and all of us businesses here locally.
You got it, man. We'll talk to you soon again. Thank you.
You take care.